Hi everybody, and welcome to the cabin at Frog Hollow. In today's episode, we're going to tie the Gapin Muddler Minnow. Don Gapin was the originator of this fly. He's from Minnesota, and he tied this fly to imitate what they call the muddler, what some still call the muddler. Actually, more than likely, it imitated the sculpin, was the critter that he was after with this imitation. Very simple fly, very effective fly. So let's tie it now. We're going to start with a streamer hook. Typically it is a 2x strong, 4x long, and we're going to dress this hook leaving the forward 1/4 of the hook, maybe even a third, depending on the size of the muddler head you want. Let's make it about a third. So we're going to dress the hook, the aft 2/3 of the hook, back towards the bend. We're going to move back to where the hook starts to make the bend, directly opposite the hook point. Snip out our excess. Start our tail. The tail and the wing are done from a mottled turkey. And there's two sides to a mottled turkey, the small side and the large side. This is called the biot side. This is called the wing side. We're going to snip out from the biot side about 1/4 of an inch for this tail, from one, and the same from the opposite or the matching pair of the wings. And we're going to marry those two together, dull side, or again, the feather has a curve to it, right? So the inside of the curve to the inside of the curve, we're going to match those tips together. Get them right, just right. Nice. And we're going to set those so that the tail material serves little function here other than to marry up with the top wing feather to make a minnow looking type of a body. So we're going to just make a short tail. We're going to stop it right there. Transfer to my left hand. One wrap loose. Notice these butts have not flared. One wrap loose, two wraps loose. Now we're going to pull straight down and those tail feathers flare, and we're setting the tail where we want it. Let's make sure that it looks right. Looks right to me. And now we're going to wrap up this excess material to our tie-in point, which is right there. And we do this to keep the body flat so there's no startup bumps. Startup bumps are bad, and a startup bump is where you put the tail in, snip the material off there, you put the next material in, you snip it off there, all of a sudden you got a hump right there. That's called a tie-in bump. We don't want that. Particularly since we're going to tie in tinsel. Tinsel is fickly. This is the gold on one side, silver on the other. Fickly, that's not a technical term, but it's fickle. You have to be careful when you're tying this stuff that the wraps stay concentric. Again, I'm going to run that excess material up the body, tie that in so that we start right where we should. Then we're going to wrap up because we're going to end the ball game up top. I just want to make sure that's all lashed down nice. And now we're going to start wrapping, so we end up with the gold tinsel. And the first wrap is the most critical. We want to cover all of our tracks back there. Tracks meaning thread. We don't want to have any threads showing. That would be the sign of, well, I guess you would call it rookie. Oop! Mylar sometimes is sensitive. Things happen. I could have hit it with the point. I don't know what happened, but it broke. So we're going to take that right back off. We're going to start with a fresh piece. Discard that. Go back to the spool. In the old days, when we tied with tinsel, you used to cut the thread. Today we tie with mylar, which is theoretically stronger, but it can be sensitive too, which you just saw. So here we go again. That wasn't too painful. Just going to add to the camera time. So here we go. First wrap is the most critical. Make sure, let's take a look. Cover. There we go. We've got everything covered. Whoops, jumped up front. I bet you I know what I did. I hit the point when I was trying to cover my tracks, and that penetrated that Mylar. So here we go. Hopefully this time, all systems go, Houston. We're wrapping up nicely. Going right up to our tie-in point. One wrap right up there over top of the Mylar tinsel. Capture that so we can tie it off. 2 or 3 wraps, we're good to go. Great. Okay, next, gray squirrel tail. Gray squirrel is like all squirrel tail, it's slippery stuff. And so tying it in and having it stay there sometimes can be a challenge. What we're doing here is this material is, one, it's the right color for the fly. It's the original recipe. But secondly, it's going to help host, if you will, the wing material. We're going to take this small fuzzy stuff out of the base. We don't want very much of this. So we're just going to clean that up. It's going to be just about to the length of the body. So we're going to stop right there, lay that on top of the hook, 2 wraps around, hit it hard, because this stuff, it doesn't flare, it's slippery, it's just not very tire friendly. I'm going to put 1 wrap behind just to lift that up a little bit. And so we are tied in, so we're going to snip this out. I would, for my money, why not? It takes 2 seconds. Since squirrel tail is so slippery, let's put a spot of clear, penetrating, flexible cement right there. And that way we don't have to worry about that again. It's over. Now we're going to take the wing side of the model turkey and we're going to snip out about 1/4 of an inch to make the wing. So there's a snip from that. And then the opposing. And we're going to marry those 2 together. Tip to tip. Bingo. And those get nestled now into that gray squirrel tail, and these are as long as the tip of the tail coming out so that they match as closely as you can. Those sit straight on top of the hook. We're going to do the same here. 1 wrap loose, 2 wraps loose, pull straight down. Those should be attached just about perfectly. Let's take a look, see what that looks like. I like it. And we're going to snip these out. Now, we've got a little bit of head cement that I put on that squirrel tail that's given us a big assist right now with that wing material. Excuse me. Next, we're going to do the muddler head. Deer body hair that is flared. The tips of the deer body hair actually imitate the big pectoral fins of the sculpin. So this hair is the tips are pretty closely matched. We don't necessarily want to stack this because the muddler historically is kind of a shaggy, I won't say ratty looking fly, but it wasn't, tied perfect like a lot of the modern muddlers are. We're going to comb the down out, so this is going to rotate and spin nicely. I've got a clump here about the size of a pencil, and we're going to measure the length of the collar that we want. That looks about right, about halfway down the hook shank. And we're going to set that right on top. We're going to take our tying thread now, and we're going to go over this material twice. Once you go around deer hair twice, folks, you can let go of it because it's going to start to rotate, and we are going to start to rotate with it. And notice how it spins around the hook, which is exactly what we want to have happen until it stops the rotation. And it has. Now we're going to pull this deer hair back, pull our thread up in front, jump right up in front, right as close to that clump as you can. We're going to snip out another clump of deer hair about half the size of the last clump. Pull the down out. Again, the down, if you leave the down, it prevents it from spinning and flaring properly. So get the down out if you're going to spin with it. Again, we're going to put that right alongside the hook shank, just kind of angled so I can wrap around it and get the hook shank itself. Twice. Let go of it. It's there. Pull and start to rotate your thread. That is not difficult. So many people have so many questions about spinning deer hair, and the key is clean the down out, 2 wraps around it, don't be in a rush, don't panic, everything is going to be just fine. Now we're going to jump up in front, make a couple wraps. We're going to use our handy dandy whip finisher, pull the hair follicles back so we don't trap any of those. 1, 2, 3, 4. And snip. Now just brush this all out so when we trim it, we get level all the way around. I'm going to pull this from the vise now and trim it. We're going to go straight across the bottom, right back to the deer hair tips. Don't be in a rush because once you close the scissors, you can't add it back on. So take your time. And now we're going to shape that traditional wedge muddler head. And again, take your time. Take a look at it from a few angles. Pull out some of those butt hairs. Let's see how we did. A little snip there, a little snip here, here a snip, there a snip. And there we have, I'll clamp that back in the vise. Looks pretty good. Traditional Dan Gapin Muddler Minnow.